There is a force more commanding than shouting crowds, more persuasive than eloquent speeches. That force is silence, not emptiness, not absence, but presence, still, deliberate and immovable. In a world addicted to noise, to reaction, to distraction, silence becomes rebellion. It becomes power. And the Stoics understood this not by speaking about it, but by living it. Look closely not at what they said, but at what they endured without a word. A man wronged by power, yet calm. A soldier betrayed by fate, yet steady. A thinker misunderstood by society, yet unmoved. Silence is not surrender. It is the opposite. It is control. You see, when we speak too quickly, we give our emotions authority. But when we wait, when we observe, when we allow the moment to pass through us without becoming it, then we own the moment. And more than that, we own ourselves. In silence, we examine. In silence, we train the mind to listen, to others, to nature, to the small whisper of truth that speaks not in volume, but in clarity. Consider this. Storms make the most noise, but the sky, the vast blue stillness above them, that is what love. Our words are the wind, but our silence is the foundation. And the Stoics built their strength on that foundation, not by arguing with fools, but by refusing to become one. When insulted, they did not retaliate. When praised, they did not swell. When tempted, they did not beg. Their silence was not weakness. It was discipline forged by wisdom. You want to be powerful? Start by saying less. Start by mastering your tongue. Start by entering a room and needing nothing from it. Not attention, not approval, not noise. Because silence is not the absence of voice. It is the presence of mind. It is the refusal to be reactive in a reactive world. It is the strength to choose peace when chaos is cheaper. Let others chase after opinions. Let others drown in debates. But you, stand still. Say nothing. Watch everything. Be the one who listens deeper than words can reach. For that silence will speak louder, longer, and truer than anything you could ever say. And when the time does come to speak, your words will carry the weight of 1,000 silences before. That is what the Stoics taught, without ever needing to say it. Silence is often mistaken for passivity, for weakness, for lack of confidence. But those who understand its deeper nature know that silence can be a form of power, pure, deliberate, and unshakable. The Stoics recognized this not through theory alone, but through the way they carried themselves in adversity. When others lashed out, they stood still. When chaos erupted around them, they remained unmoved. That was not because they had no thoughts or feelings. It was because they had mastered them. To be silent in moments where the world expects reaction is to claim a rare form of control. It means the passions have not won, the ego has not hijacked the moment, and the soul remains grounded. This kind of silence is a learned discipline. It is not the silence of avoidance or fear, but of strength, an active holding back, a conscious refusal to be dragged into emotional warfare. It requires inner fortitude to listen without interrupting, to observe without rushing to judgment, to hold back words not because they are absent, but because they are unnecessary. There is wisdom in knowing that not every opinion must be spoken, not every insult must be answered, not every provocation must be met. The Stoics taught that what is within our control is the only thing that matters. Silence is one of those things. When you can choose stillness over noise, you declare that your peace cannot be taken, only surrendered, and you refuse to surrender it. This self-restraint in speech is connected to a deeper self-awareness. The person who does not need to speak is the one who knows themselves. They do not chase validation through words. They do not scramble to be understood because they are already rooted in understanding. They recognize that words can be cheap and reactive, but silence is earned and reflective. The quiet person is not without thoughts, they are full of them. But they know that thoughts, like emotions, must be examined before expressed. Otherwise we become slaves to our reactions, to our impulses, to our momentary frustrations. And the Stoics sought mastery, not slavery. In this, silence became their armor, one not seen but deeply felt. To sit with silence also means to sit with discomfort. The world around us conditions us to fill every gap with noise, music, conversation, distraction, commentary. But the Stoic sees in silence a mirror. It reflects who we are without distortion. It shows us the parts of ourselves that rush to speak, to defend, to attack, to explain. And in facing that mirror without flinching, the Stoic trains themselves to endure discomfort without needing to cover it up. They grow resilient in the presence of stillness. They find comfort in their own company. They realize that nothing outside of them can truly disturb their peace unless they allow it. When faced with criticism, the natural tendency is to speak back, to defend the self, to justify or argue. But the Stoic refrains. They consider whether the criticism has merit. If it does, they welcome it as correction. If it doesn't, they discard it as noise. Either way, silence is the shield that prevents unnecessary conflict. The one who does not answer an insult robs the insulter of victory. The one who does not rise to anger weakens the fire of those who wish to provoke. This discipline is not about winning arguments. It is about winning the deeper war within the self. It is a silent declaration. I am not ruled by you nor by my own fleeting emotions. I am ruled by reason, by clarity, by purpose. Stillness in a world driven by chaos is not simply a passive stance. It is a conscious rebellion. When the masses rush to speak, react, argue, and defend, choosing silence becomes an act of courage. The Stoics knew that noise is easy to create. Anyone can shout. Anyone can panic. Anyone can join the outrage, but it takes rare strength to resist the pull of the crowd, to pause when everything pushes you forward, to be still when the world demands movement. Stillness is a refusal to participate in the madness of constant reaction. It is a declaration that not all things require your energy, your voice, or your time. The Stoic stands apart, not above, simply apart, watching, listening, measuring, while others burn themselves out in the flames of their own unexamined emotions. There is something subversive about stillness. It unsettles people. It disrupts patterns. When you do not react as expected, when you don't match energy with energy, you shift the dynamic. You take back control. A calm face in the middle of chaos changes the entire temperature of a room. The Stoics were masters of that energy. They didn't seek to dominate through volume, but through presence. Stillness gives off a presence that is both mysterious and authoritative. It suggests that something deeper is going on beneath the surface. It tells the world, I see what's happening, and I choose not to be consumed by it. So that choice alone is radical in a society that celebrates immediacy and noise. To be still is not to be detached from life. It is to be deeply engaged with it on a different level. The person who is still is not escaping. They are confronting life with a steadier rhythm. While others rush past their own thoughts and emotions, the Stoic sits with them, lets them arise, observes them, and only then decides what deserves action. Stillness allows space for true perception, and with perception comes wisdom. The Stoic believes that nothing can be seen clearly if the waters of the mind are agitated. Like a muddy river, stirred up by every disturbance, our judgments become distorted when we are in constant reaction mode. In silence, they listen to the rhythm of their breath, to the sensations in the body, to the subtle currents of thought and emotion moving through the mind. Each one tells a story if we are willing to listen. But if we are too busy speaking, reacting, and projecting, we will miss it all. The person who cultivates deep listening through silence is a rare presence in any room. Their words, when they finally speak, carry weight because they have been filtered through awareness. They do not speak to dominate or impress, but to contribute something meaningful. They understand the responsibility that comes with speech, and that understanding is born in the silent moments between thoughts. Listening sharpens judgment, it refines character, and it deepens empathy. It allows the Stoic to see not only the surface of things, but the layers beneath. It prevents premature judgment and encourages compassionate understanding, even toward those who are angry, misguided, or confused. Through the discipline of silence, the Stoic tunes their mind to listen not just to others, but to their own inner dialogue. They catch the subtle whispers of fear, pride, envy, or desire as they arise. They watch them like clouds passing across the sky, not clinging, not rejecting, just observing, and in doing so they gain command over themselves. They do not become the emotion, they simply witness it. This kind of listening cannot be practiced in noise. It requires stillness, space, quiet. It requires the courage to face what is inside without distraction. It is in that silence that wisdom begins its slow, powerful work. Mastery of self begins with mastery of the tongue. Mastery of the tongue. It is one of the smallest parts of the body, yet it has the greatest power to create peace or to destroy it. The Stoics understood this deeply. They did not seek power over others, they sought power over themselves. And they recognized that holding back the tongue was one of the most profound expressions of inner discipline. to remain silent when provoked, to withhold judgment when tempted, to resist the impulse to explain, correct, or boast. These are the signs of someone who has learned to command themselves rather than be commanded by the world. Speech is easy. Silence is earned. The undisciplined person speaks without thinking. They say what they feel in the moment, driven by emotion and ego. They want to be heard, to be right, to be praised. But every word spoken without thought is a step away from self-mastery. The Stoic does not chase validation through words. They do not fear being misunderstood. Their goal is not to be loud, but to be wise, and wisdom begins in restraint, in holding back a comment that serves only pride, in biting the tongue when anger flares, in choosing to speak only when speech serves something greater than the self. It is through this restraint that the Stoic strengthens their will. To control the tongue is to control the mind. Words are the outer expression of inner states. If a person cannot govern what they say, it is because they have not yet governed what they think. So the Stoic works from the inside out. They do not merely remain silent with their mouths. They purify their thoughts, their intentions, their emotional impulses. This kind of control is not cold or rigid. It is grounded, deliberate, and powerful. The person who speaks only after thinking, who acts only after reflecting, becomes a source of stability in a world of chaos. People begin to notice that their words have weight, not because they are frequent, but because they are rare and thoughtful. Every moment we choose not to speak is a moment we choose to listen, to observe, to reflect. It is in that space that real growth happens. Not every disagreement needs an argument. Not every mistake needs to be pointed out. Not every opportunity to speak is an opportunity that should be taken. The Stoic understands that silence is often more persuasive than speech. That presence can be more powerful than debate. That sometimes the strongest move is not to speak at all. In this way they conserve their energy for what truly matters. They do not waste words on people who do not listen or on matters that do not deserve their attention. Mastering the tongue also means recognizing the impermanence of emotions. Anger rises, but it also fades. But it also passes. If we speak in the heat of the moment, we often regret it later. But if we wait, if we observe, if we breathe through the storm, we find that what once demanded expression no longer feels so urgent. The Stoic embraces that space between stimulus and response. They know that in that space lies freedom, the freedom to choose, to act with intention rather than instinct. And every time they practice this discipline, they grow stronger, more centered, more unshakable. This mastery is not about silence for its own sake. It is about alignment. When the inner world is ordered, the outer world follows. The Stoic speaks when it aligns with reason, with virtue, with purpose. They do not speak to fill the air or to feel important. They speak to build, to clarify, to guide. And when there is nothing to say, they are content to say nothing, because they understand that silence too communicates. It communicates control, peace, and strength. It shows that the speaker is not a prisoner of impulse, but the master of themselves. Silence, when chosen with intention, speaks volumes. It communicates far more than many words ever could. The Stoics lived by this truth. They were not concerned with being the loudest in the room or the most quoted in a debate. They knew that virtue was lived, not declared. A person's character is not revealed in how much they say, but in how they carry themselves when nothing needs to be said. The quiet presence of someone who has mastered their inner world can shift the atmosphere around them. Without uttering a word, they command attention, respect, and calm. That power comes not from dominance, but from discipline. Their silence is filled with meaning, with thought, with self-possession. The Stoic sees speech as a tool, not a compulsion. They know that words have the potential to uplift or to destroy, to clarify or to confuse. Because of this, they do not waste them. They do not flood conversations with empty talk. Instead, they reserve their voice for when it can be of service, when it can bring truth, direction, or comfort. In every moment of restraint, they demonstrate that their words are not driven by impulse or ego, but by principle. This discipline creates a powerful impression. People begin to realize that when the Stoic speaks, it matters. Their silence builds trust. Their quiet becomes the backdrop against which their wisdom is heard more clearly. There is also a strength in bearing hardship without complaint, in choosing not to speak of suffering unless it serves a purpose. The Stoic does not seek sympathy. They do not use their voice to broadcast grievances or to gather pity. Instead, they carry their burdens quietly, not because they are cold or emotionless, but because they are strong. They understand that lamenting one's circumstances rarely changes them. It is action, not words, that builds resilience. So they walk through pain with dignity. They endure disappointment with grace. Their silence in these moments reveals a depth of character far more powerful than any dramatic outcry could. Silence also allows space for others. The Stoic listens not just to words, but to what lies beneath them. They are not waiting for their turn to speak. They are truly present. In doing so, they make others feel seen and understood. This kind of silence builds connection because it is rooted in humility. It is not a silence that shuts out. It is a silence that draws in. It communicates that the Stoic is not trying to dominate the moment, but to understand it. And in that understanding, they become someone others trust with their thoughts, their emotions, their truth. The absence of unnecessary words also keeps the Stoic anchored in their values. They are not swayed by the tides of public opinion. They do not feel the need to explain their choices to everyone. Their life becomes their statement, their consistency, their calm, their integrity. All of these speak on their behalf. Even their refusals, their non-reactions become message. When they choose not to engage in gossip, when they remain calm in the face of provocation, when they walk away instead of retaliating, they are speaking through action. That silent speech is far more powerful than loud declarations of virtue or strength. People often underestimate the influence of silent behavior. But the Stoic knows that every choice, every non-reaction, every moment of patience is teaching something to someone. Without trying to convince, they convince. Without trying to prove, they prove. Their silence is a mirror that reflects the noise of the world back to itself. And in that mirror, others begin to see the value of peace, of presence, of inward strength. It is not that the Stoic avoids communication. It is that they have elevated it. They understand that the highest form of expression is not always spoken. It is lived, breathed, embodied in stillness, in self-restraint, in quiet strength, in silence, clarity emerges. When the distractions of the outer world are stripped away and the noise of constant stimulation fades, the mind begins to hear itself. The Stoics valued this silence not as an escape from reality, but as a way to engage with it more fully. In silence, they found the space to examine their thoughts, their motives, as without interference. This introspection allowed them to align with reason and virtue. Without silence, the mind becomes reactive, tangled in external events, pulled by every passing emotion or opinion. But when silence is embraced, it becomes a sanctuary, a place to observe life without distortion. The modern world resists silence. It rushes to fill every gap with sound, distraction, and commentary. But the Stoic welcomes those empty moments, understanding that they are not truly empty. They are full of insight waiting to surface, full of lessons that cannot be learned in the middle of chaos. Just as the sea calms when the wind dies down, the mind clears when silence is honored. And in that clarity, one begins to recognize what truly matters, what is worth pursuing, what is within our control, and what is not. This awareness is not possible when life is lived at the speed of reaction. In the quiet, one becomes a student of the self. The Stoic listens to the subtle signals of the body and the movements of the soul. They pay attention to the tension in the chest, the rhythm of the breath, the flickers of thought that arise and pass. They do not judge these things. They observe them. In doing so, they train their awareness. They sharpen their attention. They begin to recognize patterns. The way fear creeps in, the way pride masks itself as confidence, the way the mind clings to false beliefs. This self-knowledge does not come from books or lectures. It comes from sitting in silence long enough to hear the truth rise on its own. The clarity gained from silence is not theoretical. It is practical. It informs how one responds to challenge, to insult, to disappointment. When one knows their inner state, they are less likely to be ruled by it. They can catch anger before it erupts, anxiety before it spirals, desire before it distorts judgment. The Stoic does not seek to suppress emotion, but to understand it, to master it through awareness. That awareness is nurtured in the quiet spaces between action and reaction, between stimulus and choice. It is in these pauses that strength is built, not just in mind, but in character. Even in decision-making, silence plays its part. The Stoic does not rush to act on impulse. They create a gap, a breath, a moment, a deliberate pause, where clarity can enter. What feels urgent may not be important. What feels true may be based on distorted perception. In silence, they test these impressions. They ask, is this useful? Is this necessary? Is this aligned with reason and virtue? Without that silent examination, one becomes a servant to mood and momentum. But with it, one becomes the architect of their actions, constructing a life on foundations that do not crumble under pressure. The clarity that silence provides also deepens one's relationship with time. The Stoic becomes aware of the fleeting nature of each moment. They see how easily time is lost in chatter, in distraction, in meaningless pursuits. Silence slows everything down. It brings presence. It reveals the richness of the now, the opportunity within each breath. In this awareness, gratitude takes root, not for possessions or accomplishments, but for the chance to be alive, to reflect, to grow. Silence becomes the ground where humility blossoms. It reminds the Stoic of how little is needed to live well, and how much is wasted chasing what cannot satisfy. So let the world rush, let the noise continue, let others chase after applause, and speak just to be heard. You remain still. Remain silent. Let your silence speak for your strength. Let your calm become your rebellion. And in that quiet you will find everything the world is too loud to see. Wisdom, peace, power, and the unwavering clarity that only silence can